Hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another YouTube reading guide series. Today is the fifth of 11 videos I'll be releasing over the next few weeks, each of which will cover a specific DC event. I've created this guide, initially at least, as a byproduct of creating my Superman reading guide, which I'm actually releasing interspersed with these videos in real time. To create the Superman guide, I had to read 1,677 comic issues that comprise the shared Superman continuity from 1991 all the way up to Flashpoint in 2011. That included spin-offs, miniseries, tie-ins, and as we can see today, events. And because I was reading events, I decided to use that knowledge to build the internet's most detailed reading maps for those events. Now, unlike the Superman guide, which is in the form of a Google Sheet I've split into 14 different tabs, the maps that I've made for various DC events will generally be infographics where that's warranted. Now, each event gets its own map and they can be viewed for free on my website. This playlist is going to contain every single DC event video in chronological order, taking up to 11 videos in total. If you're interested in the Superman guide too, but you're actually not on that particular playlist, don't worry, the Superman playlist contains these videos. A little bit of housekeeping and kind of an intro. One thing to point out is that I've read every single issue I'm talking about in all of my DC events. Me doing an event or doing a video where I haven't read every single issue is very rare, and I'm always very explicit and honest if there's a particular issue I couldn't track down, but that really is extraordinarily rare in my reading guides. As such, when I read an event, I split it into three different categories. Green for those issues that are essential issues. They contain key points for the event that you cannot miss or you'll get confused. Amber are for those issues that are related to the event, so impacted by the event but non-essential. And then token are issues that have only the faintest link to an event, if any link at all. Often it's just the branding on the cover. Speaking of which, to be honest, I split all these different colors down to two different types. If the color is a solid line, then what that means is that that is a branded issue. If it's a dotted line, that means it's an unbranded issue. That's all you need to know. Let's have a look at the map here. Yes, it's zoomed in. We're going to be zooming out in a moment. It's infinitely scalable at high resolution, so we'll be able to dance around with that as much as we want in just a moment. But here we have all 29 issues split into those three groups and in a recommended reading order. I'll just talk about the event as a whole and what it is. As you can see at the top, this is the Genesis event. The logo is marginally better than the one for Final Night, which I mentioned in yesterday's event video, or the previous one in this series, which was, of course, the worst logo known to man. Genesis is marginally better, so there we are. So what is the Genesis DC event? Well, it's a universe-wide event published, of course, by DC in 1997. It consists of a four-issue miniseries, the Genesis miniseries, which we'll look at, which was by John Byrne and Ron Wagner, and it's got tie-in issues across most of the ongoing DC series at the time. What's the premise? The premise centered around the concept of something called the God Wave, which was an interstellar phenomenon that spread across the universe billions of years ago. It created gods on its first pass before reaching the edge of the universe and bouncing back. Don't ask any questions. Bouncing back, creating demigods and metahumans on its second pass. Is now at the point that the second pass is almost at an end and it's about to reach its origin point, and that means it's now apparently for some reason threatening reality. Because as it reaches its starting point, it's going to alter or neutralize the ability of all metahumans. For some reason, the villain Darkseid has planned to somehow use this moment to steal the power of the God Wave, which obviously puts him on a path to battle both superheroes of Earth and the new gods of New Genesis. So let's have a look here. We've got an immediate token issue to start with, then we've got some related issues, and then from there we go into all the essential issues on the left. We've got some ones in green, and some of those are going to surprise you, and then we've got a bunch that are just either totally token, there's a whole load of token ones here, or there's some related ones if you're interested in those characters. Okay, so with no further ado, let's have a look at it. The very first issue, and it hasn't got any branding, so actually what I'm going to do is change this line. This is all movie magic behind the scenes you can't see, but trust me. So this is a non-branded issue, and it's JLA. Let me skip over and show you. It's JLA issue 10, actually part of the Morrison run. For those of you that are familiar with the Morrison run, very much token as far as I'm concerned, but a lot of people do say in particular reading orders that this is part of the Genesis event. I remain skeptical, but if you read it elsewhere or see it elsewhere, just be aware I'm not blind to that. I do understand that's the case. It's not branded, it's a token issue. The only reason it links into this event is because the very last page is the Martian Manhunter sensing the God Wave coming and essentially having a bit of a sort of a shocked, jaw-dropping kind of moment. Um, to be honest, I didn't realize that when I read it. I read this as part one of six. I read all six issues of the Rock of Ages story arc, and I thought the thing that John, so Martian Manhunter, was sensing at the end of this issue was the Rock of Ages. Apparently, it's not. It's the God Wave, but frankly, who cares? It wasn't relevant at all. You should definitely read this JLA run because it's Morrison's JLA run, and they wrote a brilliant JLA run that I love, but it's not really part of the Genesis story arc. Let's move over then to a couple of branded issues. These are the first branding issues. They're both set before Genesis issue 1. The first one is Green Lantern number 91. In this one, Kyle is, as you can see from the cover, captured by Desard and tortured. That's why it's got Kyle's hand and Desard's face, and it says the torture chamber of Desard. Don't come at me. It's not a spoiler. And then the other one that also could be read prior to reading issue 1 of Genesis is the related issue Power of Shazam issue 31. It's kind of related. I mean, it's branded and it does have the Shazam character losing his powers sporadically. So yeah, I guess it fits in here. But I haven't got any lines from those going into anything because I really think that these three prequel issues are easy to disregard. So let's look at the first essential issue, and it's this one here, Genesis issue 1. This does make a reference to the events of JLA issue 10, but that's not really relevant. You can ignore that. Let's have a look further along then. After this, we then got a bunch of other issues, which are related issues. So let's start off here. We have Steel number 43, set explicitly after Genesis number 1. We then have Starman number 35. And this also shows like sporadic power loss. We then have Batman 547. Don't get too excited, of course, it is a Batman issue. Restrain yourselves. This one is branded with Genesis, and it's just about an entire world kind of just sort of despairing and being all dark and gloomy, and it just is what it is. Next up, we have Superman Man of Steel issue 72. Now, this has Genesis branding, but is a very token issue, not really related to the Genesis event. It's kind of a one-off standalone. If you come here from my Superman reading order, this is where the last episode there, the 5th era of Superman, ended. It ended with these Genesis tie-ins. And then finally, of course, we have the Azrael tie-in here, which is Genesis branded and is actually issue 34. Let's see what we can do here. Let's take this and let's take that to the back. Sorry, I'm just tidying this up as I go. I think sometimes you've just got to do that while you're filming a video. There you go. As you can see, this is a new software that I'm using, which is infinitely scalable and allows me to modify this in real time. So if anyone does see any errors or flaws or things they want to talk about in the series that perhaps I need to change or could make clearer, let me know and I can update these maps on the go. Anyway, enough of that. Those were those issues there. Let's move over to the next essential issue. It is, perhaps unsurprisingly, Genesis issue 2. In this, the alien armada arrives for Darkseid, or Darkseid, but you'll see that when you get into the issue. Now, the next bit is really key. Are you concentrating? Excellent. The next issue is branded Genesis, and it's actually Superman issue 128. It is essential for the story. You have to read this. Brace yourself, it gets wilder. The next issue isn't even a branded issue. To that note, a little bit of movie magic there. I'll make it a non-branded issue, but it is absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. And that's Adventures of Superman number 551. Now, that is going to continue as we're going to see in Genesis issue 3. But before we get into that, we've got a whole load of related and token issues, as you can see here. So let's start off here. We have got the first related issue, Impulse. Issue 30 is branded with Genesis, and it's basically the whole world is pretty depressed because they're surrounded by an alien armada from Apocalypse and ruled by Darkseid. So that's understandable. The next related issue we have is Resurrection Man number 6, which again is branded, and it features kind of token power loss. Then we get into the actual token issues. These are all branded, but really seriously, feel free to ignore these. We have Supergirl issue 14. The only reason I know that this is part of Genesis is because of the branding and because there's an alien armada overhead, which she basically ignores, by the way. There's Sovereign 7, issue 27, which has the branding, but otherwise has nothing at all to do with this as as an event. We then have Robin number 46. This is an excellent issue, I will point out. It's well worth reading this. I haven't read the Robin run by Chuck Dixon, but I really want to because issue 46 was just banging. Next up, we have Lobo. As you can see, he's here on a surfboard in Bermuda shorts. As one might imagine, whilst he's surfing the God Wave, this is an utterly irrelevant token issue. We then have the uh, series Young Heroes in Love. In fact, we have issue 5 of that series. It has Genesis branding, but it's very much a token series. I will say, I did find the Young Heroes in Love series, the tie-ins that I read, really interesting, and I do want to read this in the near future. We then have Aquaman, and Aquaman number 37. Again, it's an excellent standalone issue, but it's branded with the Genesis branding for no reason. It's only a token issue. And then finally, we have Zero. I'm going to call it Zero, even though it's with an X, because I'm assuming it's pronounced the same way as Xerox. And this has got Genesis branding. It does mention people losing their powers briefly, but honestly, in such a token way that I just did not have the heart to call this anything other than a token issue. All right. And there is that. There are the token and related issues. So, next up, after Adventures of Superman number 551, the next issue to read, and this is really important to note, is Jack Kirby's Fourth World, issue 8. This has Genesis branding and is absolutely essential. The death of a key character, should I say who it is? You can probably tell from the cover. Anyway, my point is the death of a key character here is critical to know about before we lead into Genesis issue 3, which is what we're about to do. I will point out, however, that this issue, issue 8 of Jack Kirby's Fourth World, has a really long and tedious, unrelated backup story for some reason. I don't know why, but it's there. Anyway, that leads straight into Genesis issue 3, which starts off with the scene where people are choosing straws. I'm not going to get into it. And so that is an essential issue. I will point out that next to it is Spectre issue 58. Now, this is a related issue. It has the Genesis branding. The reason I put it here is that it is a paraquel to Genesis issue 3. In other words, some scenes in Spectre issue 58 happen at the exact same time as those same scenes in Genesis issue 3, and they're panel for panel identical. I'm not going to dwell on it because I don't want to give spoilers, but there we are. Now, after Genesis issue 3, we then finally end with Genesis issue 4. But before I get to that, obviously we need to look at these issues. There are 3 issues here. 2 of them are related and one of them is token. The token issue on the right is Teen Titans number 13. It is branded as Genesis, nothing to do with the story. You'll also note right from the cover here, I love being able to zoom in like this, that's also branded as part 2 of 4 of the Then and Now story arc. You don't need to read any of the Then and Now story arc, and you don't need to read this issue. Feel free to ignore Teen Titans issue 13. In addition to that, of course, we have on the left there a related issue, which is Wonder Woman 126. It has Genesis branding, and it's set explicitly between Genesis 3 and 4, so it has to go here. And of course, in the middle, we have Legion of Superheroes number 97. I'm not a big fan of these, as I think you've probably gathered by now. It has got Genesis branding, and it does end by saying to be continued in Genesis number 4. Okay, with no further ado, let's look at that then. We've got the last 2 issues here. The essential issue is Genesis number 4, and then that ends, well, with the ending. What I will point out is that Genesis issue 4 does reference, very briefly, the comic issue Superboy and the Ravers issue 14, but that reference can be completely ignored. You don't need to read that. You can just read that by itself as Genesis issue 4 is the final issue of this event, and you're good. If, however, you do want to know what that reference is about, that's the very last part of this reading map, Superboy and the Ravers, issue 14. It refers to the trial of Superman from the 4th era of my Superman reading guide, and it's set after Genesis issue 4. But honestly, it's got nothing to do with Genesis, it's got nothing to do with this event. I would completely ignore it if I was you. Okay, well, there we are, all 29 issues. Let's zoom out for a moment. That's the full thing. So, how should you read it? Well, if you just want to read the key stuff, it's pretty straightforward. Oh, sorry. What you need to do is read Genesis issue 1, Genesis issue 2, Superman, Adventures of Superman, Jack Kirby's Fourth World, and then finish off with Genesis 3 and 4. That simple. Those are the only essential issues you need. If you want to read the related stuff, they're here in orange. Sorry, I'm zooming in and out quite a lot, sorry, but here we are. We've got the orange issues there, the orange issues here, a couple of orange issues here. If you want to read in a more complete way, these are the ones you can read and check out. That's fine. And this is the recommendation of when to read those. And if you want to do the whole thing, you've got the red issues, including even the red unbranded issues. There's totally token issues that, frankly, I would not recommend, other than the ones that are good in and of themselves, like, for example, Robin and things like that. But otherwise, you've got those. There's another one down here, as you can see, with Teen Titans, and that's it. But yeah, if you want to look at this map, it's on the website. You can look at it as long as you want, zoom in and around as much as you want. Enjoy. And there we have it. In case you're interested in knowing where these resources are, so the guides, the maps, and so on, they're all available on my website. They're all available for free. You can go into the website, which is nogodsorkings.com, and download the Google Sheet for the Superman reading order, or you can go on the website and look at these reading maps for all the various DC events and a whole bunch of other things I've got on there to your heart's desire. If, however, you are interested in a written version of this guide, then it is available on Amazon. I've recently just self-published it. It is the cheapest possible tier you can get on Amazon. So it's 79 pence UK, 99 cents American, and so on. It's free if you're on Kindle Unlimited, and there is a free sample on the website as well. The reason I put this onto Amazon is kind of a proof of concept. I'm interested to see if people are interested in the written guides, whether or not people want to pick them up. And also it's a good way for me to bat off all the people that are going to be in the comments asking for a Batman guide. If you want a Batman guide, I don't really particularly have any interest in doing one, but I will do one if this book gets 500 reviews. So if this book gets 500 5-star reviews, then I will start doing a Batman reading guide at some point. I don't think that's going to happen, but there we are. Of course, feel free to support the channel by picking this up. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, the best way to support the channel is by picking up one of my other books, which isn't a non-fiction reading guide. It's actually a fictional, completely original superhero story. It's prose, so not a comic, all words, but it's about superheroes in just a really interesting kind of post-apocalyptic dystopic idea. The first 4 books of the series are out, and if you want to support, please pick that up. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay classy.